Alright, so we just derived where these equations came from, and the constant that we saw in both of them was, we saw there was a 4p. So, unfortunately, the vertex for these is not always going to be at 0, 0. So we have these more general equations, and they're going to look kind of similar for every single conic section that we do. They're going to involve some of the same letters. Most of the time we're going to call it standard form, but for this one, for a parabola, we're going to call it conic vertex form. So there are two different forms that you need to know here. I'm going to write them down and I'll explain what they are. Okay, here's the first one. X minus h squared equals 4p. Remember, I told you that never changes. 4p times y minus k. Alright? This is the conic vertex form for a parabola that either opens up or down. Okay, I will tell you right now, if p is positive, it opens up, and if p is negative, it opens down. Okay? So if it is an x squared parabola, it either opens up or down. And then we also talked about a y squared parabola. I'll tell you what h and k mean here in a minute, but for right now you just need to know that equation. Now, if it's a y squared parabola, here's what it is going to look like. Y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h. Okay, notice that in both of these equations, h goes with x and k goes with y. So if it is a y squared, this would be a parabola that either opens to the right or to the left. Okay, if p is positive, it opens right, and if p is negative, it opens left. Okay, the only letters that I have not accounted for yet are h and k, and hk, just so you know, is always our vertex. Okay, so when we get to graphing these in a little bit, whenever we are looking at our equation, when it is in conic vertex form, we will always go to hk first, and that tells us our vertex. And then remember, p helps us determine which direction it opens. So if it's an x squared and p is positive, it opens up. If it's negative, it opens down. If it's a y squared and p is positive, it opens to the right, and if it is negative, it will open to the left. Okay. Now, I just told you this. hk is always our vertex. Okay. And then I will, just so you know, okay, these are some important vocabulary terms here. The focus is the point that is p units from the vertex inside the curve. The big thing here is that the focus is always inside the curve, and it is always p units away from the vertex. So, for example, if you saw that your p-value for something was 5, if you wanted to go to the focus, you would start at the vertex, you would go 5 units inside of the curve, and put a point for the focus. Okay? Now, the other word that we have talked about is the directrix, okay? So the directrix is the line that is p units from the vertex and it is outside of the curve, okay? So what we do to find the directrix is you start at the vertex, you go p units outside of the curve, and then you draw a line to represent that directrix, okay? Keep in mind, both of these are p units away from the vertex. The focus is inside the curve. The directrix is outside the curve. Just some word association here. The focus is a point, and it is inside. The directrix is a line, and it is outside. Okay. All right, so what I would like to do here is I'd like to show you an example of some of the different things that you're going to see. Most of the things in this unit are either going to be a word problem, or it is going to be one where you have to graph a function. So I'm going to start out here with a couple word problems, and then if I have time at the end, I will show you a little bit of how this works with the graphing. So, first of all, let's try one like this. We're going to identify the vertex, focus, and directrix of the following parabola. I'm going to give you the equation. And then we're going to go through and we're going to find this, and I'll show you how easy this process is. So let's say, for example, we had something like this. Y minus 3 squared equals 8 times x minus, or we'll go plus 2. Okay? The first thing I want to tell you to do every single time on this is figure out which direction this is opening. This is a y squared parabola, which means it either has to open to the right or it has to open to the left. And if we look at this term right here, there's an 8. Remember from our equation, that term that's out in front of the parentheses is always going to be equal to 4p. Well, if 4p is equal to 8, that means p is a positive number. So we have a y squared, and p is positive, which means this opens to the right. So what we have here is we have a parabola that looks something like this. Okay. Now, if we go through and we try and find the vertex here, remember the vertex is hk. H always goes with x. K always goes with y. So if I'm looking at this, the x value for the vertex is -2, and the y value for the vertex is 3. Okay, so we have a vertex of -2, 3. If you really wanted to draw this, it would be looking something like this. We would start at -2, 3, and we would have a parabola that opens something like this to the right. Okay. Now, remember I said earlier, this number that's out in front of the parentheses, this is always equal to, we proved this earlier, it's equal to 4p. So if I'm trying to figure out what p is so that I can find the focus and the directrix, what I can do is I can set 4p equal to this number out here, which is 8, and if I solve for p, I get p equals 2. Okay. Now a lot of this is mental math. Some of you guys are going to be able to do this without showing any work, and I hope that by the end of the unit we can do some simple mental math together without having to write this down. And I'm going to try and get you guys to think through it that way right now. The focus is a point that is p units away from the vertex inside the curve. So if we look at this picture that I've drawn right here, to get to the focus, if it's inside the curve, we are going to need to go p units to the right. Okay? So try and think with me here. If we're going to move to the right, that is going to affect the x value, not the y value. So I'm going to go ahead and right off the bat, I'm going to say, okay, the y value for my focus is still going to be 3 because I am not moving up or down. But the x value for my focus is going to change because I'm moving to the right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move 2 units to the right. So think with me here, if I start at -2 and I move 2 units to the right, I get to an x value of 0. Okay, so my focus is going to be 0, 3. Now, to get to the directrix, I'm going to move p units outside of the curve. Okay? So what that means is I'm going to start here at my vertex and I'm going to go 2 units here to the left. Okay, and what I'm going to end up with is a vertical line. And we should know this already from pre-algebra and algebra 1. A vertical line is going to be x equals something. Okay, now for our equation we are starting at an x value of -2. And we are moving 2 units to the left. So when we are done, we are going to get a directrix of x equals -4 because I'm starting at -2 and I am moving 2 units to the left. Okay? Let's try one more like that real quick, and then I will finish off by trying one more word problem with you guys. Okay? Alright, so for this next one, let's say that we had x minus 3 squared equals, we'll go 6 times y plus 4. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to start out and I'm going to say, okay, I have an x squared. Actually, let's make this -6 right here. Okay? So what I have here is I have x squared, and my p value, because this number out here is negative, I'm going to have a negative p value. Okay? If it's x squared, it either needs to be open up or down, and in this case, because p is negative, it is going to open down. Okay? So I know I have a parabola that looks something like this. Alright? So I'm going to go through and identify these things. This means, start out with my vertex. Remember, h goes with x, a goes with y. So I'm going to have a vertex at 3 and -4. Okay? And now I'm going to find my focus, and I'm going to find my directrix. Okay? So if you're looking at this parabola, if the focus needs to be inside the curve, we are going to move p units down to get to the focus. Call that f, and we're going to move p units up to get to the directrix. We'll call this d. Alright? Now, before we can figure out what those are, we need to know what p is. So remember, this number that's sitting out in front, -6, that is always equal to 4p. So yes, we are going to have to work with a fraction here, and yes, that is okay. If I divide both sides by 4 and simplify this down, I get a p value of -3 divided by 2. Okay? So, think about our parabola here. Okay, we're starting at a vertex of 3, -4, and we are going to move down to get to the focus, which means the x value is going to stay the same. Alright? But the y value is going to change. We're going to start at -4, and we're going to go p units down, which means we're getting further away from 0. Okay, now this time we might need to write some of this math down, but what we're going to do is we're going to start at a y value of -4, and because we're going away from 0, we are going to subtract 3 halves from that. So I'm going to write my math out here. -8 halves, it's the same thing as -4, and I'm going p units down, so I'm going to go minus 3 halves, and when I'm done with that, I get -11 halves. Okay? Yes, you are going to need to be able to work with basic fractions for this unit. Okay? Now, to get to the directrix, I'm going to need to go p units up. So, if I'm going p units up, I'm going to start at -4, and instead of subtracting 3 halves, I am going to add 3 halves. Try to visualize this with me as we go. If I have a horizontal line, the equation to that is going to be y equals something. And in our case, we're starting at -8 halves, or -4. And instead of going away from 0, down, we're going to go up, so we're going to add 3 halves. And if I add 3 halves, I'm going to get y equals -5 halves.